Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I'd like to begin by comparing May 2020 to May 2021, and so we're going to do that first with temperatures. From the 1st through the 24th, these are the average temperature ranks by climate district. We remember in 2020 that the deep freeze that we did get May 7th through the 12th that hit the eastern Corn Belt and the Great Lakes, and then the colder air that set up here in parts of the Mid-Atlantic, while the Southwest was extremely hot. And this was a critical part of the setup of the pattern last year that helped build that larger ridge across the West that sent us over into some record dryness and record heat in the West. Now, May 2021 has some similarities. This is what it looks like. You do certainly see the cooler pattern. While we did not have the same deep freeze to begin May, we did have frost that hit from the northern plains through parts of the eastern Corn Belt. But it's been quite cool across the south, mid-south, getting over into the southeast, up through this point in the month of May. And interestingly enough, very similar to last year, near record heat over parts of the Southwest. And we need to just keep watching this because it could be a critical piece to our discussion on where the ridge eventually sets up or spends the most amount of time this upcoming summer. Whereas the temperature patterns look similar, the precipitation patterns did not. This is May 1st through May 24th a year ago, back in 2020. Notice how wet it was in the Mid-Atlantic through the eastern Corn Belt. We were drier in the southeast through the southern plains and extremely wet in the Pacific Northwest as they finished their wet season. Well, this is this year, and that's quite a difference. The West having near record dryness, the upper Midwest very dry, same with the northern plains. Lower Michigan approaching records here. 130-year records are starting to fall in lower Michigan, and it's the same thing for the Mid-Atlantic, getting down through Florida. On the other side of this, record wetness down here in the south, getting from the lower Mississippi River Valley over to this part of Texas, where some places down here, just in the last week alone, have measured over 1,000% of normal precipitation. Let's go take a look at that. Last 2 weeks here expressed as a percent of normal. We can start to hone in on those very dry pockets from the Great Lakes states to the northeast into parts of the Mid-Atlantic. In fact, in Virginia, there's places we haven't measured rainfall in the last 2 weeks, and that extends back into parts of the Tennessee and Ohio Valley. Meanwhile, extremely wet here. Also extremely wet in parts of the high plains, but it's important to notice this region right in through here where we're watching some storms roll through overnight, that there are places that have missed out on the heavy rainfall despite having the open Gulf of Mexico moisture transport. And as we saw, the West remains very dry on weak split flow that has just refused to return moisture here late in the year for them with respect to their rainy season. So from there, how about the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation? Down here in the south, from eastern Texas and Louisiana through through Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. Some pockets in here, 6 to 12 inches of rainfall. I want to note how dry it has been around that large ridge over the east. Extremely dry along the east coast. And it is important to see that there are sections in through here that missed out on the rainfall that did come through. Severe weather over the weekend in the high plains and streaks of moisture that did get through the Corn Belt. But it is important to note that there are places in here that are still very dry, and the rainfall kind of came through and helped a little, but was not the kind of soaking rains we would want widespread to really force this crop into a much better situation. The models did okay with this. Overall, the European has been our best performer. I'll show you that in a few moments. But when you kind of just compare, I know there are different projections here, but if you compare what the European model said to what actually fell, it did pick up on this drier swath and through here, and it nailed, of course, the ridge over the east. It even got this sector right in here last week. So this is last week's forecast. You see it? Maybe you missed this. This has been a little bit farther to the east. You'll just take a note here that that's where that heavier precipitation moved through. But for a 7-day forecast from a global model, this is very good performance overall. So let's take it from there and go and look at snow really quickly here. This is just this weekend's snowfall. So we can see here coming out of the parts of the Rocky Mountains into Montana here, some places picking up 6 to 12 inches of snow, and the mountains much higher amounts. And we did put down some snow here throughout the Great Basin, some of the higher elevations as well. That's how deep that trough has been in the west. Well, what that trough did yesterday as it ejected into the plains was just rip through the high plains of Colorado into Wyoming, western Nebraska, and South Dakota, producing some extremely large storms here, big hailers, and another 10 reports of tornadoes coming out of Colorado. But as I play this forward, I just want to let you get up to where the sun was setting, and you can see the subsidence in the upper levels of the atmosphere suppressing, well, what would normally be scattered showers and storms on afternoon heat. You see, if I go back, you see the cumulus cloud field building here, but it fails to achieve, there it is, it fails to achieve deeper convection, which would result in scattered storms. It just drops off here under that larger ridge. Just to show you the storm reports, this is what we added in yesterday. So it was a stormy weekend all across the high plains. But these storms in the overnight hours, as they tried to move through South Dakota, really began to fizzle out. In fact, this is the latest national radar image we have here early this morning on Monday. And these storms really kind of petered out right into this area. Now, I'd like to show you what happened yesterday, because we did bring in, look at this, in Wisconsin, into lower Michigan, there was some scattered storms. This wasn't the widespread, drought-curing rain that we like to see, but it's rain, and I'm happy to be able to see that. The storm's exploding here on the high plains, though. We can just see the stream of moisture coming into Texas and Oklahoma. Some of this was the remnants of a little tropical disturbance we watched over the weekend develop in the Gulf. And as we play this forward, overnight, the storm's outflow boundary got out ahead of the main storm line, the main updraft, and as a result, into the morning hours, they begin to fizzle out. We lose the instability, and at the same time, the storm just raced out ahead of itself. So this never made it into the Red River Valley, and the storms really weakened as they moved into eastern Nebraska and South Dakota as we get right here to where we currently sit. All right. So from there, let's go out and look at soil moisture. I think this is where the key lies in understanding our drought risk moving forward. We're going to look at two different levels. The first is the 0 to 10 centimeter depth soil moisture percentile. This is a NASA product here. You do notice how much of the east is sitting at less than 5% in that top 4 inches or so of soil moisture. Our deeper issues can be seen here. And what this shows me is that when we examine regions that are going to continue to be susceptible moving through the end of May into June and July, these are the areas in the deepest shades here where we are concerned about the redevelopment of drought, flash drought on the surface, and then the extension of that drought much deeper into the soil. So we have to watch the evolution of this map very carefully as we have regions that are extremely dry at this point. Okay, well, this is the problem today. We still have our large dominating ridge here with a trough that's developed into a low that's moving out of Alberta into Saskatchewan. And so given that that's the setup, this is our all hazards weather map. You can now see the effect of that dominating ridge. These are all air quality advisories and warnings. So just poor air quality on upper level suppression. But outside of that, our all hazards weather map is relatively benign, which is good to see this time of year. Severe weather today, stretching from Texas on the old outflow of those storms up through parts of Kansas, Nebraska, extending into Minnesota. We're going to keep an eye on this corridor today. And because of the dominance of that ridge earlier in the week, you'll notice that by tomorrow it doesn't shift too much. We have a marginal threat from Texas through Iowa getting up toward Wisconsin. I want to take a look at it here by going over to the high resolution rapid refresh model. Let's take this back to the beginning here. So through early this morning, what we're going to watch is this. There are storms possible and some scattered rain moving through the extremely dry regions of Pennsylvania into Virginia. I'm going to watch that carefully throughout the day today. You'll see that by 5 p.m. Central Time, this is when the atmosphere will break through the cap and start to produce some storms right here, extending in toward Minnesota and Wisconsin. So we'll let that go out to about 8 o'clock tonight. You can see the low that's developing in Saskatchewan, and we're also going to watch for some afternoon storms that could be coming through parts of Oregon, getting over toward Idaho as well. Playing into the overnight hours with our high-resolution model, we're going to keep an eye coming out of New Mexico, coming into this part of Texas on the southern end of that boundary, and that could pull into a pretty long squall line that could do some damage here in the overnight hours. And then as we work our way into the midday on Tuesday, we're going to continue to watch this area for the risk of those strong to severe storms, which we saw right here. But from Tuesday into Wednesday, we're going to reset the atmosphere into this area coming out of the high plains of Wyoming through Nebraska over toward the western Corn Belt. And what's initiating this region of slight risk for severe storms and then extending here into the northeast, there's a frontal boundary draped here and a new low that we expect to form there. And that low is right now just waiting for us right here. It's this trough. And this trough is going to come over in the next 24 to 36 hours, come over the mountains. It'll then set up here in the plains, move over through Illinois, and eventually into the mid-Atlantic. And that is a great storm track to increase rainfall in places that desperately need it. So let's show it to you. European model. This has been our better performer, so we're going to stick with it here. As we go through the day on Monday, now into Tuesday, we've seen this with the high-resolution model we showed a moment ago. This is where we've got. On Tuesday evening, getting into Wednesday morning, here is the feature that came out of this part of the Gulf of Alaska right along the west coast, and our low is moving through Quebec. Now, scattered showers and storms through this area on Wednesday morning, but let's now get into the afternoon and evening. Now, here's our front, and our front connects right back to this next developing low, and we're drawing moisture out of the Gulf. So if we just kind of paint this, our frontal boundary is in through here, and the moisture return is there. And so what we're going to watch is, this is now Wednesday evening, getting into the overnight hours into Thursday morning, afternoon, and evening. That short wave by Friday morning is now moving through parts of Illinois, and it extends back through Missouri and Oklahoma as well. Now, interestingly enough, as we get into Friday morning, currently the European model is putting down quite a bit heavy rain right on top of Indianapolis. And why this is important is this is going into the Indianapolis 500 weekend. And I know that Coca-Cola lot can get pretty muddy. I'm going to keep an eye on that. But this wave clears out, and this is by Friday afternoon and evening, and it begins to start, to show better chances of rainfall late this week, from the driest parts here in the mid-Atlantic to the northeast, including Pennsylvania, stretching back through the Virginias into Kentucky, Tennessee, and the tail end of it, possibly increasing severe storm threat right around the Red River of the South and back over to the Panhandle. Now, where we go from here into early Saturday morning, here we are Saturday afternoon and evening. A cool down comes in on this high, clears things out. There is a weak frontal boundary sliding through the Red River Valley of the North as we go through the weekend. And let me just play this out through Sunday morning, afternoon, and evening. So this is the day on Sunday, higher pressure, cooler conditions stretch through here. And as we go on through into early next week, the atmosphere does go back into a bit of a reset. And we better see what those week 2 precipitation patterns are going to look like. First, total accumulated precipitation from the European through the next 7 days. This is what we're looking at here. Latest update, again, this is the 0Z run from today. All right. It's maybe sometimes easier to see this in terms of an anomaly. And so you can see where that front combined with that wave cut right through this area. And to see above average precipitation here is fantastic. The southeast, extremely dry. And that area has been an area that we've had a difficult time returning moisture. Now, the GFS model has a different solution for this. So watch, I'll go back and forth. European, GFS. And the GFS model, you may say, why have I not been using it? This is why. Dr. Maui here puts together a skill score, and the red line is the GFS. It is lower. It's been down here. Its performance through mid-May has been below what the European is, and the spread right now is several percentage points. I would also like to tell you why I continue to say that I don't trust the longer range forecast. Do you see how the skill in all of the models is going down? That is something we need to pay attention to here. It had been pretty steady from March through April, and since then we've started to see these time periods as we transition into more convection and subtler features in the jet stream that the model's performance has dropped. So another thing that's been going on, we've seen some shifts in both the vertical and zonal integral of angular momentum. Now remember, we're really just thinking here about the atmosphere and its motion compared to normal. And even though momentum is coming up, I would like to note where it is coming up. It's not as though it's cranking. So we still have some weakness here in the westerlies, in the mid-latitudes. in this area, right in through here, that it's not as though we've cranked up the wind speeds there. In fact, I'm watching the jet stream really push to the north. What's happened here is that we've lost this area right around 30 degrees north here, where we had some much lower momentum. So the upward trend is there. Now you're going, why? What does this all mean? This all means this, okay? I want you to pay attention to where these troughs and ridges are going. And we're going to play this relatively quickly. Because as we play this out through this weekend, getting into next week, there's the cool down. That trough right there is going to bring in a cool down next week. But overall, what we see here is a lot of higher than normal atmospheric heights flanking North America. A ridge here and a ridge here. And the net effect is to take the jet stream and push it farther to the north. And these ridges tend to be factors that slow things down. Now, we can also see it in the jet stream level winds. I've just left this out here, day 10. And all the way at day 10, the main jet stream is here in the north. And we have these just subtle features that just keep cutting farther to the south. But that's all they are. But what we don't have here is a screaming jet across the United States. So what do the models end up doing with it? Well, by day 10, the flow pattern comes around a deeper trough here, and it runs over a ridge in the west. This is the little bit of a cool down we're going to experience. But seeing troughing to the north like this, there's even a trough over by Iceland. This tells me the jet stream is returned back to the north, and it's going to give us this precipitation pattern. It's going to keep this area open, and this will be most critical to watch, the drier conditions right in through there. Unfortunately, the European has a drier swath from the northwest through the northern plains out of this pattern, as one trough wraps up here, and the second one comes over here. Is the GFS in agreement? Yeah, by day 10 you saw this. There's the deeper trough. Here's the next one. With the ridge coming into the west, that would be a positive PNA pattern. And what it ends up doing is giving you this precipitation look. So the models, interestingly enough, have a similar precipitation pattern into week 2. But I'm telling you, I don't really have much confidence in it, just like I didn't last Thursday, because of the overall weakness of the flow. So what's also going on? The tropics. We had our first named system over the weekend named Anna, and it is moving out here into the North Atlantic. It's not a threat at this point. So let's talk about what all of this means in terms of temperatures, and we'll wrap this up. From April 1st through May 21st, we're looking at growing degree day unit anomalies. This comes from the PRISM data set. So now you can see the effect of what I started with today when I showed you the cooler conditions. From there, max temperatures. Okay, watch this cool down coming at the end of the week. We're cool in the west to start things off. There's Tuesday's highs getting into Wednesday. Look at the cool down coming here in the northern plains. And then as we go through the week, there's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So by the weekend, we've now built the ridge back in the west, so the temperatures pop back up here, and we're slightly cooler than normal going across much of the rest of the U.S. But look, there's a lot of 70s in here. I love this. This will be great. Overnight lows. I want to show you very quickly. There's Tuesday, but look, Wednesday. Could get some frost coming here into northern parts of North Dakota, and that could move over into northern Minnesota Thursday morning. By Friday morning, we're now talking about some lows in the upper 30s in Wisconsin over toward lower Michigan. And there's Saturday morning, chilly morning right here in and around the Great Lakes. Just wanted to kind of keep you aware of that. Out there farther, this is day 5 through 10 from the GFS. Now we can see the ridge building into the west. This is the positive PNA pattern. The broader trough here cooling things down. Is it in the European? It is. Same scenario here. The color bars just look a little different. But you can see the cooler pattern that we'll be setting up here in the midsection of the country while the west goes warm. Out to day 10 through 15, we continue to see the heat building back into the west. And a lot of what's going on here, this is just remaining cool due to cloud cover and increased precipitation. The GFS sees very similar thing, but very hot coming into the western part of the United States. We'll stretch this out as we finish it up. MJO, where is it currently? Coming out of phase 4 into phase 5. It is right now going through phase 7 and possibly over to phase 8. Now, a month ago, it was swinging way out here through phase 8, 1, and 2. We don't anticipate a return out there. This is part of what gave the eastern part of the United States its major cool bias. The longer range models right now look like this. Now, the color bar here, these will be warmer than average and cooler than average for week 3, which we're defining as the 6th through the 12th. You can see the impact of the ridges that flank the U.S. Warmer here, warmer there with cooler conditions in the midsection of the country. This is now week 4, June 13th through the 19th. Again, we're staying warmer in the east, very warm in the west, with near normal to cooler than normal conditions in the midsection of the country, according to the CFSV2. The European model is also on board for this. Same time period, June 6th through the evening of the 12th. We're warmer east, we're warmer west, and through the midsection of the country, we have that near normal temperature pattern. Then if we just go on out there, all the way out to the next time period, we see the same thing. So there's some interesting agreement in the longer range models. I think a lot of this hinges on the MJO right now and what the atmospheric momentum is doing. But I'm going to stop there and hope that you all have a good week, and I'll talk to you again on Thursday. Thanks.